Let's walk through some of the decisions to make with regards to testing. I'm going to go ahead and get started by creating a repository. I'm going to call it assessment demo for a README. I'll make it public. I'll initialize it with a README. I'll enter node as my getignore and MIT license. I'm going to go ahead and copy this repository to my local environment. And I'm going to enter here git clone. And I'm now going to move into my new repo. Now inside of it, I'm going to copy some code that I've written beforehand. And I'm going to go ahead and do that now. There are 4 files. I'm going to go ahead and open them and talk through some of the code. I've gone ahead and opened here the files, all 4 of them, and I'll go from the data to the logic to the presentation. As you can see here, I have a pretty simple file. It simply assigns an array of strings to users. However, note that I need the code that is below line 3 for testing. I am exporting here users, and later within the testing section, I can get a handle on that data. The next one is the list.js, and all this does is define a function that takes as an argument an array, joins that array, and returns that as a string. However, as you can see, once again, I have here code that is hooking onto that function so I can get a handle on it once I am in the testing section. And the last file, the very first one there in that list, is the HTML file. This is importing users, it's importing list, and then it is calling that function with users as an argument, and then writing that joined list to the console. So let's go ahead and run this on the browser. I'm going to go ahead and move here to a blank page. And I'm going to load that file. And as you can see there, as expected, I have Abel.John, Abel, John, Bruce. So that's all pretty well and good. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the testing. And you can see there the testing is requiring list, then users, putting them into variables. Then I am calling join here simply to make sure that it is within scope. I then do the same thing here when it comes to the assertion within the testing suite. And I'm going to go ahead and run that now at the console. Before I do that, I need to create an NPM project. So I'm going to go ahead and enter NPM init. I'll go with the defaults. I'll say testing demo for a description. Entry point of list is fine. Then I'll enter jest as a testing command. It reads my repo, author Abel, MIT.edu. My license is going to be MIT. And yes, that is correct. Now I'm going to install npm jest. And this will take a bit because there's a lot to bring down. Once that is done, we can go ahead and run our test by entering npm test. And as you can see there, that test suite worked. Now the pollution of the hooks that are necessary to be able to get a hold of the code in users and list.js, it's ugly. And so an alternative is to be able to do that without that mechanism. And that is the code that I have here next. And that is simply evaluating JavaScript. Now, this is a huge security issue in general. However, this might be okay for our testing environment. As you can see here, I am reading those files directly from the file system, list.js, users.js, and then I am evaluating that JavaScript. We potentially could do that through the mechanisms that Node gives us. However, it is not permitted for security purposes. So I am sort of going around this by reading the strings from the file system and then evaluating them in this environment, which means that I am polluting the space in this file. Again, this might be okay what we're trying to do, but I just want to be explicit about what that is. Now, once we do that, we can actually comment out all of this part here in users, the same in list. Let me go ahead and make sure I've saved those. And now this test suite should run just as it did before. So I'm going to go ahead and run the test suite. And yes, as you can see there, that has passed. However, this is sort of bringing everything that could be within that file as opposed to explicitly stating what is going to be exported. Now, to some degree, the people who will run this test suite have access to the export anyway, and so they could decide to export anything they wished. So that's why it might be okay for us to do this. If we decide to do this, this is much cleaner on the student side, on the learner side. There's none of this try-catch that we have to use. However, on the testing side, we will have to be reading directly from the file system, and we will be importing everything that is on that page, which means that we have to be careful what we are bringing and that we're not overriding some of our scope within the testing side. So I'm going to go ahead and share this, and we can have some discussion.